Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Laura Shrake. I am with the Council of the Great Lakes Region, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Business and Sustainability webinar series, a part of our work supported by the Herb Family Foundation that is engaging a network of companies who are committed to building a better future in the Great Lakes region. Today's webinar also is serving as the first webinar jointly held as part of the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative, an initiative that is co-led by the Council of the Great Lakes Region in partnership with the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. Today's webinar will take a close look at net zero strategies and how efficiency and technology play important roles in the process. And I'm joined by my colleagues from the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development and from AEP Energy. Today's topic is relevant globally and can be applied across many regions. But for today's discussion, we'll be focusing primarily on the Great Lakes region. The region is comprised of 8 U.S. states from Minnesota to New York and 2 Canadian provinces, Ontario and Quebec. And at the center of the region are the Great Lakes, an essential freshwater system that holds roughly 20% of the Earth's surface freshwater and 84% of North America's. The 5 Great Lakes have an important role in the well-being of the region's millions of residents. They provide drinking water for over 40 million people, and they sustain life for thousands of species. The economic region holds major industries that generate business and provide 51 million jobs, equivalent to about 1/3 of the United States and Canada's workforce. And with an economic output of approximately $6 trillion US, if the economic region was a country, it would be the 3rd largest national economy in the world. With its shared sectors and integrated supply chains, this binational region is a leader in innovation and a growing player in the clean technology revolution. And as a result, the region is positioned to lead the transition to a low carbon economy, in part through efficiency and technology. With the climate crisis and environmental stresses increasing at an alarming pace, we must ensure the long-term sustainability of this mega region that holds so much environmental and economic significance. Today, our featured speaker will walk us through the necessary considerations for net zero strategies, including the importance of adopting a conservation-first mindset, as well as the efficiency measures and technologies that are sometimes overlooked when developing a net zero strategy. Another important aspect to consider is the role of partnerships and collaborations. We know that no single organization or sector has all the necessary resources to solve the climate crisis or the region's challenges on their own. And that's why we've created multi-sector and multi-stakeholder programs. One such program is the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative, a platform where collaboration is happening to create measurable long-term impact in reducing emissions across the region. AEP Energy is one of the collaborative's many members, and we'll hear from their Managing Director of Business Solutions shortly, followed by a short Q&A session. But first, I'd like to introduce Claude Griffin, Executive Director of the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development, who will share more about the Carbon Collaborative and then introduce our guest speaker. Claude is well-versed in energy, environment, and social investment, and it's always a pleasure to work with him. Claude, thank you for co-hosting this webinar today. I will now hand it over to you.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here. And hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today, and especially for this very informative webinar. As Laura mentioned, I'm Claude Griffin, the Executive Director of the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. First, I'd like to say a few words about the Business Council. The Business Council, a 501c6 nonprofit business association, was founded in 1992 to give leading businesses a platform to work together to design, implement, and scale sustainability solutions. Today, the Business Council's cross-sector platforms, projects, and partnerships bring leading companies together to solve circular economy, carbon, energy, water, and equity challenges across North America. The Business Council is a global network partner of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We also recognize climate impacts are disproportionately experienced by underserved communities and work to ensure a just transition for all communities that are dependent on fossil fuels. A key component of the Business Council's mission is equity and inclusion for the most vulnerable populations. One pathway is to connect students and professors from minority-serving institutions with ongoing activities of the Carbon Collaborative. We seek to broaden understanding of climate imperatives and opportunities being pursued by business and industry, opening the door to research, entrepreneurship, and leadership. We're pleased to have partnered with Mark Fisher, President and CEO of the Council of the Great Lakes Region, and members of the CGLR team on the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative that was launched in October 2021. The Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative is a cross-industry platform designed to mobilize the collective energy and motivation of businesses in the binational Great Lakes region to create measurable long-term impact in reducing carbon emissions in the region while enhancing economic vitality. The collaborative is organized into working groups, with each one focused on carbon reduction technologies such as carbon capture, utilization, and storage, hydrogen, nature-based sequestration, and electrification. Additional decarbonization methodologies include wind, solar, and nuclear. Representatives in the monthly and quarterly meetings from various industry sectors like energy, utilities, transportation, academia, solution providers, and NGOs have identified opportunities for participating partners to partner on federal agency funding initiatives. The objective is to identify projects for public-private partnerships. The collaborative does not advocate. However, it seeks opportunities to inform policy when policy is a barrier for achieving carbon reduction goals. In 2022, the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative submitted comments to the Council on Environment Quality interim guidance document titled Carbon Capture, Utilization, and Sequestration Guidance in response to the request for comments to assist federal agencies with the regulation and permitting of CCUS activities in the United States. One of the observations made by collaborative members was the opportunity to reduce permit review time for Class 6 wells by streamlining the permitting process. This is only one example of the work that's being done in the collaborative. We encourage you to go to our website at greatlakes.carbon-collaborative.org, click on Get Involved Today, and we'll be glad to have a conversation about your organization's decarbonization objectives and invite you to attend one of our meetings. Today marks the first presentation in the webinar series on the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative. It's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker, Brandy Nye. Brandy is the Managing Director of Business Solutions with AEP Energy. She has over a decade of energy experience ranging from regulatory rate strategy and analysis, economic development, supply and demand side product and service innovation, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability consulting for commercial and industrial partners. In her current role, Brandy leads a sales organization focused on business development efforts around energy retail supply, energy services, and custom energy solutions for commercial and industrial sectors. Prior to joining AEP Energy, Brandy worked for Entergy, specializing in decarbonization innovation at Entergy Services, and graduated with her executive master's in sustainability leadership from Arizona State University. Brandy's role includes understanding sustainability trends, policies, and energy-specific regulations that feed directly into customer insights to build tailored energy solutions. Brandy, over to you.
Great, thank you, Claude. Thank you, Laura, for the introduction. There's no surprise as to why we're happy to be here today to talk to all of you, especially after the introduction on the council the CGLR. We're really excited to be a part of this Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative and happy to be here today to really share with you some insights that we've gathered along the way, but also really just to support all of the great work that we're doing in the collaborative. And really the reason that we're a partner of the GLCR is, we're really here because our mission is aligned to not only meet our own carbon reduction objectives by 2045, but also to help our clients in meeting their objectives. It really is partnering to meet the goals collectively. And our partnership with the Carbon Collaborative really allows us to gain insights from various different cross-sector perspectives. It drives us towards action. So we're not just theoretically talking about carbon capture, storage, hydrogen, electrification. We're actually coming up with strategies, plans, testing, and implementing objectives in a collaborative and very learning environmental kind of manner. So it's really great. We're really happy to be here today. Hopefully we can provide you with some insights to help you on your carbon reduction journey, and we'll have some time for questions at the end as well. So really thank you for having me and thank you for the introduction. So before we jump in, I'll tell you a little bit more about who AEP Energy is in case you're not familiar with the organization. AEP Energy is an affiliate of American Electric Power. So if you are or not familiar with American Electric Power, it is one of the largest utility in the United States. So we have regulated utilities. We also have choice power competitive markets, which is where AEP Energy is. And really AEP Energy is specializing in customized energy solutions and programs for our larger commercial industrial customers. So we also operate from a services and on-site perspective nationally. So if you think about AEP Energy, we can support you regardless of the market that you're in across the United States. And our approach is very much aligned with the Carbon Collaborative's approach to solutioning for sustainability, right? So we're here to take a holistic, integrated, programmatic manner that's end-to-end to help us with designing programs that enable us to be successful in meeting our collective carbon reduction needs and sustainability objectives. Really, the way that we think about energy management, and I'm speaking about energy management in a manner that's holistic because there is a systems approach that's needed when you think about sustainability. It's a core competency of sustainability, and understanding the systems of your energy is going to help you with enabling you to be effective in reducing your carbon emissions without breaking the bottom line and investing too much money on special projects. When we talk about systems thinking, when it comes to energy management, we're identifying tipping points and we're understanding feedback loops. So you might have a tipping point depending on your operations that you're very vulnerable to market fluctuations. Maybe you're in an area that has a lot of grid outages and you need resiliency solutions. Or maybe you don't have accessibility to renewable energy or are subject to some interconnection queues at a larger transmission kind of level. And so understanding the feedback loops within your system is going to enable you to be successful on all of your parameters of reliable power that is greener, that is lower emissions, that is carbon free eventually, but also that's cost effective. And so understanding the integration between different kind of domains of energy is really important. And I'll just give you an example. So if you think about cost management, if you have a really robust cost management program, you're going to understand your rates. You're going to understand where you're spending your money. It's going to be a little bit easier if you understand your data, and we'll get into some of the pain points with data in a minute. But any kind of cost management program that you have, any savings realized can feed your sustainability objectives. And so you can continue to optimize ways to save money, get additional revenue, to create opportunities to fund some of the topics we're going to talk about today to reduce your carbon impact on the environment. So again, here's kind of how we think about energy management, and we have 5 domains. Obviously, today we're here to talk about sustainability, renewables. We're going to really deep dive on energy efficiency and different technologies because we do believe that is a sweet spot of net zero strategies. But before we dive completely into these 2 domains, just understanding cost management, the ability to peak shave or have a robust demand management program, and understanding what's feeding your supply from the resources within the grid mix are all going to be really important for you to consider as you're building your strategy for sustainability or carbon reductions, or if you're already all the way where you've met some targets and now you're focused on long-term, it's really important to, again, have this systematic way to think about your decarbonization objectives. And once you get to your carbon reduction objectives, how are you going to maintain that? And so it's really important to take this holistic kind of point of view. So now we'll start to dive in a little bit deeper. I think we all know decarbonization is really complex. Sometimes we will hear our leadership make an announcement that we're going to be net zero by 2040. We're going to be a certain percentage by 2030. And oh, by the way, that's not too far off. 2030 is right around the corner. And there's a lot of complexities that come with reducing your carbon impact in a timely manner at the cost that's applicable to you, and also to make sure that you're not disrupting any of your operations. So it really requires a strategy. You have to understand energy markets. You have to understand energy solutions. There's engineering requirements. There's a lot of developers knocking on our doors. So how do we really understand it all and put it in a way that we can implement a strategy that's going to enable us to be successful? And so there's also a few other things that make this so complex. If you think about our portfolio of facilities, if you're one of those organizations that has diverse facilities across many regions, each facility is going to be different. There's going to be different operational requirements, different rate structures, different energy renewable options that you're able to access if it's on site or off site. And then the data collection issue. I think for any of us that have gone through a carbon inventory process, or even just trying to understand our bills on electric and gas, it's not as straightforward as we may think. It's a big process. There's a lot involved. It takes a lot of time. I'm sure we've all felt the pain points of data collection, but it really is true when it comes to decarbonization. You have to get the data. You have to understand your impact, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and all of that's before you can even think about all of the options available to you. So we mentioned also before that there's multiple vendors, suppliers. You have people knocking on your door, pushing their products. You have different financial models to compare. You're not always comparing apples to apples. So how do you find the right solutions that are the right fit for your operations and your financial appetite? All of this complexity is where we try to break it down and enable us to overcome inertia and break it down in a manner that we can be successful. So this is a framework that AEP Energy has relied on. We've found a lot of success with it for ourselves as well as our clients. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this because I think this is really important for us to understand what all goes into a decarbonization strategy and how should we think about things. How do we break down this complexity? The first step for us is what we call a landscape survey. A landscape survey is just that. So based on all of your facilities across your portfolio, again, if it could be different regions, or you could be just maybe a high energy user with one facility. You could be all in the Great Lakes region, or maybe you can be somewhere else in the Gulf Coast. It doesn't matter. We look at everything in your region by your facility, scope 1 and scope 2. We can talk about scope 3 later. That's probably its own webinar. And we say, based on everything that you have, all of your operations, we understand your energy usage, we understand how you're sourcing your power. Here are all the options available to you for you to reduce your carbon. And so this really helps you with identifying emerging technologies, some technologies that we all are aware of, like renewable energy options, some energy efficiency, electrification, you name it, you're putting everything on the table. So you know, based on your facilities, everything that you could possibly do. Well, we all know everything you could do is not everything you should do. And so the next phase is phase 2, where we say, okay, here's all of the options that we're looking at or that are possible. What makes sense for us? And so we do a technical feasibility study based on your facility's location, weather, you name it. We also do an economic viability study that tells you this is how much it's going to cost. Here's your ROI. Here's your carbon reduction. Here's your timeline. Here's some risks that are associated with each measure. And then we're really looking down at the numbers, at the math, to say, here's all of the things that we need to consider to evaluate project by project, facility by facility, on a portfolio basis to make decisions. and enable us with the data and the market expertise that we need to be able to develop a strategy. Phase 3 is our strategy. And if you think about strategy development, you've probably heard the term decarbonization roadmap. By the time you're done with phase 3 in our process, you'll have a roadmap. It'll be robust, it'll be thorough, it'll be thoughtful, and you're going to be able to develop this based on scenarios. So you can do scenario modeling by taking the inputs of everything that's technically feasible and viable for your location, that's going to meet your carbon reduction needs, for you to be able to say, here's how we want to lay out our decarbonization roadmap. You might have some people that are in the beginning of their sustainability journey where leadership might say, I just want to be in compliance. I don't want any penalties. What can I do as a scenario if I'm just purely compliance based? And maybe that's RECs and offsets. You can toggle and say, I'm only going to turn on RECs and offsets because that's where I can meet my compliance requirements, depending on what your appetite is at leadership. Now, let's say you're a sustaining enterprise, you're Patagonia, you have already walked the talk, you've already done on-site solutions, you understand renewable energy. What else is left for you to be able to toggle through to get you to not just maintaining your 100% net zero, but also paving the path for others? So all of this can be done in a scenario modeling tool that can really outline, based on your strategic objectives, your leadership, and honestly, your stakeholders, what is going to meet the desires and the future vision of your company to be sustainable in the way that you describe sustainable to be. Finally, project execution. I wish it was as easy to say we have a roadmap and go out and execute, but it's not. We need a playbook. We've talked about multiple vendors, multiple different markets, multiple different options. All of the complexities really fold in again when you get to project execution. Who are you going to partner with? How are you going to partner? What projects are you going to do? How are you going to prioritize them based on what you put in your strategy? And how are you really going to implement this so that you can be successful? And finally, every program needs to be monitored. You have to track success. You have to continuously look for optimization opportunities and cost savings. And the journey to net zero is not one that ends at a certain date. It is one that's continuous, and you're always going to have this in your mind. So if you thought that one day it would be over, I'm here to tell you it's probably not going to be over. It's going to be continuously something that your organization is going to have to think about and continue to think about, as collectively we're partnering for the goals to reduce emissions and to have a sustainable future for all of our companies and for all of our communities and stakeholders as well. So I talked about measures a little bit when I was talking about stage 1 and stage 2, but we'll go into the 5 measures how we see it, and we being AEP Energy. So I'm not going to dive into energy conservation and efficiency on this slide because we have the rest of the talk to go through this, but on-site renewable energy, rooftop solar, you're probably seeing carport solar, there's land solar, you name it, there's all of these different options. Off-site renewables, virtual PPAs, community solar programs. Are there programs that are available? What do the economics look like? Do they make sense for you? What utility green tariffs are out there? Again, what are the economics? Is there availability? Is it even a program that's available in your area? What's the resource grid of your utility? Are you using 50% brown power, 90% brown power? Or are you in an area that's a little bit more sustainable as far as the renewable energy that are in the resource plan and that's serving your power? RECs and offsets, if that's an option for you, what's the market pricing? What are you, your company's appetite? Do you want additive? Do you want location? Is the type of technology important? All of these are questions that you're going to have to ask yourself when you're looking at your net zero strategy and what's important to you. And finally, electrification, whether it's internal electrification, beneficial electrification from scope 1 to get to scope 2, if it's transportation electrification. I think we're all hearing and seeing a lot of exciting electric vehicle, hydrogen fuel kind of vehicles coming online, and what's the viability of that? What's the range anxiety? Do I need to change my operations or how I think about my behaviors as drivers? You name it, it's all there. One of the reasons we wanted to focus on conservation and efficiency is, 10 to 15 years ago, renewable energy maybe wasn't as prevalent in the marketplace and for organizations to discuss. as it is today. A lot of the conferences that we attend, a lot of the customers that we talk to seem to have a good handle on renewable energy, at least the concept of it. Maybe not understanding all the options, but the concepts, they are a lot more than probably energy efficiency and conservation, even though we all have heard about changing light bulbs and seen that happen. So really, at the end of the day, the way to think about it in our mindset is carbon reduction efficiencies are really where your technology sophistication meets your financial structure appetite. And what we mean by that is there's a lot of solutions that have been proven in the market. You've got a lot of data, case studies that show you how these projects are reducing carbon, how much they cost, how it impacts your operations. You have other technologies like hydrogen, renewable natural gas. We're talking about, we heard Claude mention the working groups where all of those things that we're looking to invest in to reduce our carbon impact, they can get complex. And it takes a partnership of many different sectors to figure those technologies out before maybe you're ready to invest in it. So I do encourage everyone to be a part of any of those working groups. If those technologies are interesting to you, definitely you'll gain a lot of insights. You'll be a part of a lot of great studies and programs to do the evaluation. So now we'll focus on energy efficiency because that's why we're here. So you'll probably never hear another energy person say this because we make money based on meter spinning, but the best megawatt hour is the one not used. And what do I mean by that? It's pretty straightforward. If you're not using energy in some aspects, then you have zero emissions from your energy usage because you're not using it. You're reducing your energy spend. And oh, by the way, you're providing the grid potentially with some support for resiliency needs collectively for your community that's on that particular infrastructure grid that you're tied into. If you reduce your energy consumption first, then perhaps you can save in the amount of renewable energy procurement that you need in the future. So let's say that you reduce by 1 megawatt, we'll keep it simple, of energy. That's 1 megawatt less if you have a REC strategy that you have to purchase. So you want to make sure that you're reducing, conserving as much as possible, in that you're looking at your decarbonization strategy holistically as a system, as we mentioned before, so that you can meet your objectives at the right cost and you are prioritizing the projects based on risk, timeline, implementation, and financial structure appetite. There's a lot of mature technologies in energy efficiency and conservation. It's been around for a long time. Maybe not all of the things we'll talk about today, but there's a lot of data. There's a lot of studies out there that tell you that you are actually going to realize the savings that you were promised. There's a higher ROI a lot of times on these types of projects, and it just makes sense. So if you have a high ambition sustainability objective to get to net zero, maybe you have a science-based target that you've adopted, the less energy you use is the best thing for the environment. So you're meeting your high ambition abatement strategy, and efficiency is the way to go right there. So if you think about greenwashing and all of those concerns, it pretty much goes away when you're using less energy. So continue to do so. So we've developed energy conservation principles. There's really 4 principles that we believe that you need to investigate to come up with a really robust energy efficiency conservation program. So the first one's energy recovery. So really boil down as simple as possible. This is just the prevention and minimization of energy waste. So anytime that you can capture waste through a recovery process, you're reducing the amount of fuel that you would have otherwise had to use. And therefore you're increasing your efficiency and you're reducing your carbon impact. So really important energy recovery. Energy controls. I think if we've ever sat in an office and you go to lunch and you come back, your lights might turn off if your company has invested in behavioral kind of controls. Because if you're not in the office, why do you need to use the lights? And therefore, can you conserve energy? This is one of the easiest probably things that we can do is alter our behaviors to consume more energy or set controls that do it automatically for us, because we are creatures of nature and we like our comfort level. And sometimes we're not always thinking about what is the best way for me to reduce my carbon impact, but these controls can help you there. Leakage is the next one. So as many times as you can eliminate leakage, the better. Weather stripping, caulking, ductwork, you name it. I think we've all heard of it either from maybe the home level more so than the business level, but it exists in both ways. If you've ever been into an old house and you can see the lights coming from the door, from the floor, then you have to be thinking to yourself, wow, the people that have this electric bill are paying a lot more electricity than they should, because I can see the cooling exiting or the heat coming in the house. So you're identifying leakage already. It's just putting on a different mindset of why it's really important to eliminate it. The last one is probably the most familiar one of all of us that we think of is equipment upgrades. So it's well known, but it's also really difficult sometimes to get internal buy-in for equipment upgrades. It costs money. You've got to invest money to save money. I think we've all heard that term. Luckily, there are a lot of financial structures and different models and partners that are willing to come in and support you on how do you want to fund these equipment upgrades. And the reason that there's so much interest in innovative solutions in the financing side for energy efficiency or conservation is because it's been proven to be successful. And so if there's an opportunity for you to save or get a shared savings on a cost model, then we're all for it, right? So before I go into the conservation measures, I want to talk about kind of the elephant in the room. Like, am I actually going to see the savings that I'm promised off of my initial investment? That's of course the first question that I would ask. If you want me to do lighting improvements and I get a sticker shock of $5 million for lights, I'm gonna say it's light bulbs, let them burn out and then go over time and replace them, as needed. Well, I think we've seen enough proof in lighting that we understand that there's a clear benefit to an investment here. We know it's worthwhile. But when you get outside of lighting, it gets a little bit more tricky. There's some different technologies, different use cases that are coming out, and a lot of this can cost a lot of money. So my caution is just be mindful of the economic models that are being presented to you and the ROI on different projects. Many different models, you can see many different measures. And so you need to make sure that when you're looking at project over project, you understand the likelihood of your cost savings, the ROI, the payback period timeframe. And that's when we go back to laying it out in a strategy in a way that you have every project on the table. So you're not investing in the shiny kind of model that comes across your door just later to realize you would have rather had spent that investment money on a different project that would have met your objectives a little bit better. The other thing to mention about energy efficiency and conservation is this is a truly collaborative effort. So it's a part of your sustainability journey. You probably have sustainability professionals in your organization, or you might be one that you're pushing efficiency and conservation because it makes sense. You have finance people that need to be involved, facilities, operations, maintenance, you name it. And so really on that strategy development phase in your framework, do a stakeholder matrix internally. Ensure that you're getting buy-in and support from your leadership and that you're delegating authority to those individuals in your strategy that are going to be responsible for making decisions. They've got the authority to spend the money and that they're going to go ahead and own this program from an energy efficiency perspective, manage all of the stakeholders, all of the partners to make this successful. And if you can overcome that internal inertia, then that's going to be one of your biggest hurdles. So we'll dive into each of these measures on the next few slides. Building improvement. So I do want to mention the Inflation Reduction Act for a lot of these measures. It really increased economic kind of the opportunity here. So tax deductions for HVAC, lighting, you name it, it makes it more attractive. If you've done an analysis for business improvements in the past, I encourage you to refresh that analysis because maybe it's a little bit more favorable now to meet the requirements that you have to move forward with some projects. So never just put something on the shelf and leave it. It could come back. So refreshing your analytics and looking for incentives is really important. Steam system hot water conversion. Steam can have intensive maintenance problems between traps, pipes, components underground, you name it. So always ask yourself, not just for steam systems, but any system, is there any other way that you can make an initial investment to pay it forward, meet both your energy efficiency costs and carbon reduction goals? So this is just another way that you can do that. Waste energy recovery. So this is simply just the process of capturing and utilizing energy that would have otherwise been wasted. Again, the IRA made an investment opportunities more attractive here. So anytime you have improved incentives, it's definitely worth taking a look. It really can, these waste energy recovery systems really can provide significant environmental and economic carbon reduction benefits. So if we're capturing heat that otherwise would have been wasted, it's a direct reduction in our emissions. It can lead to lower energy costs. And if you think about circularity, we're all trying to achieve circularity and we're thinking about the concept. This is a really cool way to kind of think through that and have a project that can do that for you. Okay, two more. So heat pumps, they lead to efficiencies in really many ways. So first, they use renewable energy. If you're using renewable energy, you can eliminate emissions that you otherwise would have used. They transfer heat rather than creating heat. Anytime you can transfer heat rather than create it, less effort, significant value in energy conservation reductions, right? And they do have dual functionality for both heating and cooling. So you don't need two systems. You can have one system. In sum, they're really just highly efficient. They're a sustainable option to cool and heat your facilities. If you haven't looked into them, I encourage you to do so. Finally, process controls. This is really critical to any EE program that you're going to implement. So how you use energy, how can you reduce waste, how can you increase your efficiencies across many different domains is really important. Invest in system automations. Asset optimizations are really important. Energy management systems can be really great here as well. And energy management systems can really help you with controlling and monitoring your operations to make sure that you're achieving your maximum efficiencies. And when we talked earlier about continuous improvement, I mean, this is just a great way for you to really look and make sure that you're optimizing your assets and that you're managing your energy responsibly and sustainably. So regardless of the measures that we talk about or any measure that you adopt that we did not go through, because trust me, there's a lot more that we did not dive into today, just be sure to always measure your progress, measure your energy savings, measure your carbon inventory impacts, and continue to have a pulse on the different things that are coming, both emerging technologies, financial options, as well as just making sure that you're looking at your plan, your strategy, and you're implementing it in a way that overcomes inertia, but also enables you to drive success to meet your objectives. Okay, well, that's all that I had for you today. Really excited to be a part of it. Very thankful to be here, to be on this webinar and to share some of our insights with you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Laura for questions.
Great, thanks, Brandy. Yeah, that was great. I think it was a really nice presentation to be our first Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative webinar, because you gave a nice high-level overview of those important aspects to be considered in net zero strategies. So thanks for that. I've got a few questions. I want to start with, I guess, the role of businesses and sustainability, because we're seeing more businesses addressing the issue of climate change by making decarbonization goals and net zero commitments. So can you share with us what you see as the role of business in sustainability and in taking climate action?
Absolutely, and great question. So, if we think even high level to the global scale, and we're talking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Number 17, goal 17 is partnership for the goals. And the goals for them, sustainability is not just carbon related, it's environment, it's social, it's all of these things that are critical for us to sustain life as a global, as Earth, right? And so the partnerships mean public, private, government, you name it. And it's critically important that businesses play a role fundamentally, especially in these kind of higher emitting countries, that we are social responsible for our environment, for our emissions, for our impact on climate. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we're monitoring what we're doing. And for businesses to play a role, it's actually really interesting to me because I see it as an opportunity. So I think depending on where you are in your phase of sustainability adoption, from, I mentioned avoidance. So we have probably some businesses that just want to avoid it. You have some that are in compliance that say, I just want to do the bare minimum to get by. And then you have others that are transforming, doing change management, transformational and incremental change management to meet the objectives of their stakeholders. And the reasons that I think we're seeing stakeholder pressure from investors is because it's an opportunity. I think 10 years ago, it was innovation. Now it's sustainability. But the opportunity is there because sustainable business means you need to be financially stable. You've got to be operational sustainable, and you need sustainability for all your stakeholders. And back to sustainability, meaning a lot of different things. Your business needs to be around. You want it to be around. Your investors want it to be around. Your customers do. So if you're impacted by more frequent, higher intensity, climate-related events or poor air quality, then are you going to be able to sustain and deliver the products or services to your customers in the manner that they want it, or the manner that you were the highest level of quality products? Businesses in particular have the investment dollars to spend. They have the backing of a lot of entities and organizations. And I think the pressure that we've been seeing over the last 15 years has really driven us towards change for a better future, and not just for the climate, but for the people, employees, customers, everyone that's a stakeholder. We're all humans and are living with the environment that we have today.
Yeah, and we are seeing a lot of businesses making those commitments, which is certainly on the right track. For the businesses that are committed to sustainability and climate action, I imagine it can be quite challenging for companies to keep up with the new innovations and the technologies that are on the market. What is your advice for companies who are trying to make smart business decisions when choosing energy saving equipment and technology, but just might not know where to start?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'll lean again on, if you have a partner that can help you, we're not all experts in every vertical, right? I'm not an expert in the chemical industry. I wouldn't expect them to be experts in the energy industry. So really relying on someone that can help. These working groups, so the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative, that's a great way to learn about the innovative technologies in a very safe, educational manner. There's podcasts, there's experts out there. And to do a landscape survey, the research there is pretty straightforward, easy to do if you have the right partner. And you want someone that's agnostic and not biased potentially to their own technology. So always be mindful that we're all in business to make money, revenue, but really to find the partner that's right for you, to investigate those emerging technologies. There's a lot of associations like yourselves that are here to help. And if you have questions, they'll point you to some credible resources. Always make sure that you're reading credible resources and that you're relying on the experts and not just the new innovative videos that you might see on a LinkedIn kind of page when you're scrolling.
Yeah, that's a good suggestions. And thanks for mentioning the Carbon Collaborative there, because you're right. That's a great platform for companies to come together and engage with others who share similar decarbonization goals. We've got a couple other questions. I want to ask one, when you are, it's based on your presentation, when you talk about scenario analysis, are you also considering possible future policy landscape, say if we have a carbon price for emissions? That's one question that's come through from the audience.
Sure. So you have to look at policy and regulations, and I wish we all had a crystal ball that could see what's coming, but we don't. So a lot of time there's a unspoken kind of value of carbon internally for organizations where they have a price on carbon internally, but it's maybe not defined, written down how they came up with it, but there is a price of carbon. It's just not the official price of carbon that I think we're expecting to see in the future. When you think about policy too, and you see the news about, the SEC announcing last year proposed rules for climate related risk disclosures. And now, oh, by the way, if you're a public entity, if this ruling goes forward in whatever shape or manner, it's going to cost you money to internally gather that data. We talked about the data issue that could be a problem with you getting your carbon inventory. There's all these things that you have to mobilize and get ready for when you start to see policies and regulations change. And that's just on a carbon environmental perspective. You also need to look at the energy markets. What's happening in energy markets? Are there interconnection queues in MISO versus PJM? There's all of these different components that make up a lot of complexity within your risk, as well as the viability for the projects that you're going to pursue in your strategy. So one of the things I mentioned is never just put something on the shelf, always refresh. We can put into the scenarios the risk assessment of what we think might be coming. You have different announcements every day of utility entities that are coming out saying, you know, I have a 2050 goal to be net zero. Well, what happens when the grid gets to 2050? Do I therefore have to have a strategy for my organization, or do I wait for the grid to green? Well, there's risk associated with that as well. And so there's technologies that fail. There's a reliability and cost perspective for utility power that's really important. So it all depends. And that's a long way of saying, to some extent, that is regulations and policy will be a part of that strategy development, only as available as what we know that might be coming, right? So it's always really important to continually be able to refresh that. And what's important for the framework on that refresh is once you have the landscape and the opportunity assessment, that's the biggest effort. So you have your strategy, you know your plan, you've got the numbers, it's just a refresh. You should have everything pretty much identified. There might be some outliers, but it's an easy process to do.
Great, thank you. Another question on a similar sort of level is asking if you can re-mention the federal grant program that might help convert a steam-driven heating system.
I'm not sure if you're talking about the IRA, but I do have a colleague, Sean, that's an expert on the IRA.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of programs. It depends on exactly what you're using that steam for. So if you're using it for like heating and cooling a building, one of those ones that was mentioned was kind of the 179D, which is kind of that tax deduction. Other than that, it really depends on what you're going to use to kind of heat that hot water. So, you know, there's the nice thing about when you're doing steam, you're kind of limited on the technologies available to you. It's pretty much natural gas right now. You know, you can argue electric boilers may be coming, hydrogen may be coming, but those are still kind of far out. So producing steam, you're pretty much constrained on the technologies that are used. When you produce hot water, though, you can use heat pumps, you can use microturbines, you can use fuel cells. There's lots of different ways to produce that hot water, and that's where your incentives would probably come in. So it depends on what technology you'd use as that source for the hot water.
Great, thank you, Sean. And I should mention to our audience, Sean is on the back end. He is also with AEP Energy and has joined Brandy to help answer any questions that came in. So we may have caught everybody by surprise with Sean's voice sneaking in there. So thank you, Sean. Another question that we have is around AEP's target ROI. I don't know if you can answer, what is AEP's target ROI for efficiency capital investments?
So AEP is a complicated company with a lot of different affiliates. So we have American Electric Power, we have our regulated entities, and then we have AEP Energy. And so I'm not really positive in which direction to answer that, but if we want to take it offline, I'm happy to answer that in a different way. But I think it'll be a larger fact-finding discussion as to what we're trying to answer there.
Okay. Yeah, there's also a couple questions that have come in around cost, which I imagine would probably need to be separate conversations post-webinar, but around the cost of your services, or how much does it typically cost a company to have an analysis done to see how they can improve energy conservation?
Sure, and that is very different from client to client, portfolio of facilities by facility, types of facility, if you're a manufacturing versus a bank. All of that is a very complex costing model that goes into what we would have to do for an analysis. So I don't have an answer, but would be happy to talk offline about specifics. It does get very specific, though, to energy usage, your carbon inventory, and what is in scope and the types of operations that you have as well.
Okay, great, thanks. And I think you shared your contact details on your presentation. Is that correct?
Yes, and I will share it again, and I will make sure that everyone that participates has both a copy of the presentation and my contact information, and happy to have any discussions further.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, we'll be sharing that copy of the presentation along with the link to the webinar recording early next week. So we'll make sure our audience gets that. And so I think with that, we don't have any further questions from the audience. I would just like to thank you, Brandy, for your time today and sharing this great presentation and overview of net zero strategies for us and our audience. And also thanks to AEP Energy for its support and involvement in the Great Lakes Carbon Collaborative. Claude, thank you, and to the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development for your partnership and co-hosting today's webinar. And I'll just sort of, I guess, say that anybody that is interested in the Carbon Collaborative, please do feel free to reach out to me, to reach out to Claude. We would be more than happy to speak with you and have you engaging with the working groups of the collaborative. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Claude. Thank you, everyone. Really excited to be able to share.